Hello, welcome to day 5 of Typographics, the design festival for people who use type. I'm Ellen Lupton. Typographics is produced by Cooper Union, a mighty little college in New York City dedicated to art, architecture, and engineering. I'm a proud graduate of this truly amazing school. And Cooper Union has produced the Typographics Festival for 7 years now. This year, 10 guest curators from around the world have selected amazing designers to share their work with a global audience. Today's event is curated by Ilya Ruderman, who has invited 6 designers to speak today. Before I introduce Ilya, let's enjoy these original animations created for the conference by our sponsors. Hi, it is now my great pleasure to introduce Ilya Ruderman, a type designer and graphic designer from Russia. He is a graduate of the Moscow State University of the Printing Arts, and he has an MA degree in type design from the Type and Media program at the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. He works with many clients in Russia and has been an art director for Afisha's City Guidebooks and the news agency RIA Novosti. He teaches type and typography at the British Higher School of Art and Design in Moscow. In 2014, he founded CSTM Fonts with Yuri Ostromensky. He spoke here at Typographics in 2017. and it's so great to have him back. So welcome back, Ilya. Where are you now? I understand you're not in Moscow.
No, I'm not in Moscow. Hi. I'm in Barcelona. I moved to Barcelona in 2016, and I'm still living here, enjoying the sunny Barcelona. Super hot here right now.
It looks beautiful. Let's start.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen, for such a great introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Typographics 2021. First of all, I'm honored to be here today, and I'm very grateful to organizers for inviting me here to curate. The first reaction I had when Sasha introduced me an idea of curating a Cyrillic section of Typographics was how the hell I'm gonna do that? The reason for such reaction was the size of the industry. I remember the times when it was about 10 professionals, but it's not like that anymore. The same way the industry of type design dramatically raised over a couple of latest decades globally, the same thing happened in Cyrillic segment. Hundreds of type enthusiasts, dozens of professionals. So the first thing I asked was, how should I choose anyone for such a unique opportunity? And then Sasha said, hey, don't look on this as a unique opportunity. Think about it as a marathon for the next 20 years. We will have a chance to give everyone a chance. This just may take longer. And that's what I did. My selection is thorough and random in the same time. The logic was simple. We will slowly travel in time from the past to the future of Cyrillic typography, looking on it from a very modern but yet contemporary perspective. Before I'll introduce the first pair of speakers, I just want to invite all of you to ask the questions in the QA window. Please do that. And we will respond after the presentation to all your questions. Well, and here we go with our first speakers, Oleg Macujev and Maria Skopina. I will introduce every pair of speakers super briefly to save more time for the lectures and presentations. Oleg is a very experienced type designer and calligrapher, a former student of a very known teacher, Alexander Tarbiev. We met with Oleg first time over 15 years ago, and since that time he was surprising the market with brilliant typefaces. Please find OM type collection of fonts on various platforms. Maria Skopina is a brilliant calligrapher and teacher, a researcher of old Russian manuscripts and first printing books. And together, Oleg and Maria will share with us one of those research. So please welcome Oleg and Maria. Guys, feel free to start the presentation when you're ready. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, Ilya, for introduction and for your invite to participate in Typographics. So we would like to tell you about our study of old Cyrillic calligraphy, which we did while working with manuscripts from the collection of Russian National Library, and about the amazing features of these scripts that we discovered. And our story is also about the importance of paying attention to historical material, because it can give a lot to modern type and graphic designers and calligraphers as well. While the history and techniques of Latin calligraphy are fairly well known, mainly due to the work of Edward Johnston and his students, we don't know much about Cyrillic calligraphy. Perhaps the main reason for this is the type reform of Peter the Great and the related gap in the development of the Cyrillic alphabet. The reform brought Cyrillic and Latin typeface close together, and the old calligraphic scripts, which had developed for 7 centuries in a handwriting book and a century and a half in a printed book, were pushed almost exclusively into the church books. So Peter's reform was the reason why Cyrillic calligraphy and type design have little in common, and this problem still exists. So What do we know about these old calligraphic scripts? The development of Old Russian calligraphy covers the period from the 11th to the 17th century, and usually we can speak about 4 types of writing: ustav, poluustav, these are 2 formal book scripts; scorapis, which was primarily used for administrative correspondence; and vyas, script for headlines. There is a great variety of different scripts behind these rather conventional names. Many paleographic studies have been devoted to Old Russian calligraphy, and today there is a growing interest in historical forms among practicing calligraphies. Meanwhile, the technique of Old Russian calligraphy has not been fully known yet. In books on Russian paleography, there are rarely any notes on the technique of calligraphy. At the same time, paleographers often write that ustav and poluustav are not writing, but drawing or lettering. For example, these scripts are often called lettering. As for the calligraphy practice, Cyrillic artists began to use the broad-edge pen only in the middle of the 20th century, and they mainly worked with adaptation of Latin script. So they didn't often work with old Cyrillic scripts and knew little about it. The first calligraphic guides with old Cyrillic script have appeared quite recently, but they didn't deal exactly with historical scripts. Modern calligraphers prefer to write with broad-edged pen, both ustav, poluustav, and even vyas. However, they also repeat words about the drawing letters of poluustav and ustav. What do they mean by that? In the books about Cyrillic, we don't find any definition of writing and drawing as the 2 ways of creating letters. So let's start from the definition of the authors who work with the Latin script. These are definitions of Edward Kachich from his book, The Origin of the Serif. Writing is the method of making letters in which each essential part of the letter is made in one stroke. Lettering is the method of making letters in which each essential part is made in more than one stroke. Something similar we can find in Gerrit Nordzy's book, The Stroke. However, he points out another important thing. Writing preserves the characteristics of a single stroke. The characteristics of a stroke in writing are always shown, and therefore the characteristics of the tool are also shown. And for lettering, both the process and the result depends little on writing tool. We reviewed a set of Cyrillic manuscripts from the 14th to the 16th centuries from the collection of Russian National Library to understand how old Cyrillic scripts are related with this definition of writing and lettering. We wanted to identify the ductus of the scripts based on our observation and calligraphic experiments. What can we see in the old manuscripts? Did medieval scribes really use the lettering technique with plenty of messy strokes, or did they write with letters like modern calligraphers? Numerous examples of old Russian calligraphy quite clearly demonstrate that medieval scribes use a broad-edge tool. We can see that most scripts follow the principle of a fixed pen angle for most strokes, and distribution of thick and thin elements depends on the direction of movement. The different angle of the pen and pen size determine the deservity of calligraphic scripts.
Finally, we focused on 3 manuscripts representing the most typical Cyrillic scripts of relevant periods. On the left, you can see the late ustav of 14th century. In the center is a liturgical poluustav of the 15th century, and on the right, an ordinary poluustav of the 16th century. We will start with the manuscript that is latest in time and the simplest in its graphics. This is the Лицевой летописный свод, World's Chronicles and Russian History, made in 16th century. This is the most common poluustav handwriting of the time. In this hand, most of the letters were made at the same pen angle, which is approximately 20 degrees. In the diagram, you can see the ductus of the script. Besides the basic edged pen technique, the scribe of the manuscript use more complex techniques, such as, firstly, use a steeper pen angle for the strokes to make them thinner. For example, in the centers of the Cyrillic letters R and U. Secondly, a slight change the pen angle in the process of writing, the rotation of the tool. So the middle stroke of the Cyrillic letter F becomes a little thinner downwards because when writing, the quill turns anti-clockwise. And finally, in some letters, there is triangular serif. This element is made by moving the quill to the corner. All of these techniques, of course, writing, not drawing. The same technique is used by modern calligraphers. The next manuscript we will look at is the Lenten Triodion, made around 1456 by the scribe named Yakov. This is a remarkable example of the 15th century liturgical poluustav. There are some differences from the script that we considered earlier. This poluustav is more static and contrast. And the most interesting thing is the unusual shape of the stem, which expands at the ends. A careful study of the manuscript led us to the conclusion that in order to get such a shape, the scribe duplicated the strokes in the main elements, overlaying them on each other. This is evidenced by the following features of the writing. Firstly, difference in the thickness of the stems. This is especially obvious in the Cyrillic letters P and N, in which the left stem is noticeably narrower than the right one. Secondly, a difference in width between the thick stems of the main letters and the thin stems of the letters located above the line and at the end of the lines. The reason is that there are no duplicate strokes here. Thirdly, the handwriting of this manuscript is of a very high quality, but in some places we can still see some inaccuracies. In the main element, from time to time, there is a mismatch of the strokes that are parallel to each other. Sometimes this can be found in the wide letter O as well. At the same time, the two strokes crossing the oval just show the actual width of the quill. And finally, there are dark stripes in the middle of the stems. Ink accumulates in the places where two parallel strokes overlap, which leads to a greater color saturation in the central part of the stems. What does such a technique give? Firstly, the widened ends of the strokes make the graphics more interesting, and the rhythm of the handwriting becomes more complicated. And secondly, it increases the contrast of the handwriting, which makes the letters more solemn. So duplicating the strokes requires a greater number of movements than with the usual technique of working with a broad edge quill. On the other hand, there is no need for the scribe to change the pen angles so frequently or perform complex quill manipulations to achieve the desired rhythm or a certain shape. For example, Yakov makes triangular serifs with simple downwards movements, while the scribe of the Лицевой летописный свод for the same shape had to do complex manipulation using a quill corner. Let's look at an even earlier manuscript, The Apostle, written by the scribe Mark in 1391. This script is a late ustav. The letters are massive, with a strong contrast between thick and thins, angular, tending to a rectangle shape. The writing of this manuscript is very well executed, definitely made by a master scribe. And once again, we see the different width of the stems changing from letter to letter. This helps to define a technique similar to that of the previous manuscript. However, unlike Yakov, who used two parallel strokes, Mark makes the main elements in 3 strokes. The shapes of the letters of this ustav are very difficult to write them with a quill of the same width as the width of the stem. It would be necessary to use a lot of rotations and retouching. Modern calligraphers had worked this way, trying to copy the late ustav. Let's watch a video with writing of the letters from this manuscript. Mark often changed pen angle, but as a rule, he used only two positions, 0 degrees for vertical elements and 90 degrees for horizontals. The scribe made triangular serifs, avoiding complex quill manipulations. He made the serifs just in 3 strokes, as well as the stems. In this way, the calligrapher makes more movements, but they are simpler. This strange technique allows Mark to create complex and sophisticated letters. For example, in the white O, the outer contour is an oval, and the inner contour is close to a rectangle. The shape of the letters are not the natural result of freehand movements. Mark builds letters from numerous strokes, and his letters are static and massive. In this ustav, the elements of the letters of the same direction are no longer necessarily have the same thickness. There are letters with inverted contrast. The widest elements are not vertical, but horizontals. However, such forms work well with more common forms and create a complex and rather interesting rhythm of the page.
The calligraphy technique of scribes Mark and Yakov can hardly be found in European manuscripts. We can mention only medieval Latin versals and Byzantine headline script, which were created in a similar way. But probably this technique is quite rare for a text script, and perhaps is only the Cyrillic calligraphic feature. What does this technique belong to, writing or drawing? If we will use definition of Katic and Nordsey, we should call this technique as lettering. But as we remember, Gerrit Nordsey insists on the importance of the single stroke in writing, its distinctness. In our Cyrillic letters, sometimes it's rather difficult to distinguish the stroke, but all in all, it's not lost in the mass of others. It continues to be essential, defining the shape. Looking at the endings of the stroke, their dynamic, the rhythm, we can see that the letters are made with broad edge pen and not with any other tool. In Mark's and Yakov calligraphy, each element consists of a very specific number of and very specific strokes, in contrast to lettering, where the sequence, direction, and number of strokes are messy. Thus, the letter M is made of 10 strokes in Yakov and in 17 strokes in Mark manuscripts. These strokes are standard, and even the inaccuracies of writing, the calligraphy don't use additional strokes that could hide the mistake. Therefore, we can reveal the strokes and make diagrams for each letter, and in case of drawing letters, it's completely impossible. In the discussed manuscripts, we are undoubtedly dealing with writing, not lettering. Therefore, the existing Latin terminology is not quite suitable for a Cyrillic script, so we want to propose our definition of writing and lettering. Writing is a method of creating letters in which the stroke is essential for creating the letter. The number of strokes for each element is limited and constant, and the letter forms depends on the writing tool. Lettering is a method of creating letters in which the shape weakly depends on a single stroke, and the number and nature of strokes are irregular. Edward Johnston used the term compound letters while speaking on Latin versals, which have much in common in technique with letters from Mark's and Yakov's manuscripts. He refers to them as scenes, all the heavy parts of which are made of 2 or more strokes. Johnston points out that these letter forms are more likely to be freely writing than drawing. Compound letters in Johnston's work are opposed to simple letters. Those we can call the technique used by the Cyrillic scribes as a simple and compound writing accordingly. So, why did the medieval Cyrillic scribes use such a technique? We don't have a true answer to this question. but we can assume that these methods allow them to make special forms of letters, complex forms, and they could not make these forms with simple writing. And if we speak today about type design for long text and calligraphy scripts for long text, we first think of functionality and simplicity, but medieval scribes thought first about certain ideal of beauty, and then they created the letters trying to embody this ideal. It doesn't matter that they spent a lot more time on it. In addition, we can see the simple writing and compound writing developed simultaneously, and in each particular case, the scribe could choose whatever he wanted to use, a simple or more complex calligraphy. Of course, the discovery of the old Cyrillic calligraphy technique, compound writing, provides new opportunities for modern calligraphers. On the one hand, artists can now copy historical scripts working exactly the same way as the medieval scribes. On the other hand, this technique opened the new space for experiments in Cyrillic. Using the ancient technique, calligraphers can create modern works. And of course, such experiments can influence type design as well. The Novgorod typeface of Marina Marina was created on the basis of compound letters and became the winner of modern Cyrillic type design competition in 2019. The discovery of compound letters can both give a basis for experiments and give an understanding of what Cyrillic alphabet is and how to work with it. And also, our discovery is another reason to look at something familiar with new eyes. In our old manuscripts and printed books, we can probably find many more amazing things. And these findings will certainly help us in our daily work. Thank you.
Wonderful lecture. Thank you, Oleg and Maria. That was very inspiring. First of all, I want to publicly share my personal reaction. When I first time saw this research published, I was shocked, honestly. I think it's a Nobel Prize. I'm really was surprised how many discoveries you did during this research. And I couldn't imagine that such a knowledge was in front of us, hidden for such a long time. I couldn't believe that this is possible, honestly. So and that's pretty much how I wanted to jump into the Q&A session. And I'm inviting everyone to think about your questions and use the window Q&A to ask us about anything. My first question will be here from me. I'm sorry. I'm really curious to know, did you guys really were the first one who discovered this? I mean, I really can't believe that nobody before you did that. And I'll just translate it in Russian, just in case. Это правда, что вы были первыми, кто обнаружил вот эту технику, такой способ написания и каллиграфии, и никому в голову не приходило на нее обратить внимание?
Ну, Дмитрий Ильич Петровский в своей книге о каллиграфии упоминает, что поздний устав, скорее всего, рисовался более узким пером. Но какой именно технике это делалось, что это стандартные движения были, этого он не писал. То есть то, что более узкое перо, это приходило в голову исследователям, но конкретная техника до этого, никто про это не говорил.
Надо сказать, что палеографы в основном не занимаются вопросами техники. Для них это вопрос скорее какие-то исторического бытования того или иного почерка, а не того, как это все писалось. Но зачастую они даже не представляют, какими инструментами пользовались. Вот. А у каллиграфов просто не дошли руки, потому что, как мы сказали...
И ноги в библиотеке.
Да. Только в середине 50-х начали писать широким пером у нас, и до этих почерков, в общем-то, постепенно дело доходило, и я думаю, в той или иной степени дошло бы у других каллиграфов, но вот так получилось, что да, наверное, первыми.
Thank you. So then we have several more questions, and I will jump to a couple of questions from Indra. What was the theory before how this contrast came about? I was always suspected kind of a pressure pen, pointed nib was in play. Откуда возник такой контраст? Индра подозревает, что там было какое-то мягкое перо изначально.
Ну, нет, в принципе, это было мягкое перо, да, это было гусиное, но давление не использовалось. А вот эти формы такие причудливые и несколько необычные для нас, но вот Герман Цап говорил, что форма у него в голове, то есть не в пере, не в особенностях давления, не в чем-то еще, а в том, как он ее представляет. И вот почему-то они представляли ее таким образом.
Выполнялась она ширококонечным пером, который дает контраст за счет направления движения.
Okay, so broad nib. Okay. One more questions. I think we have time for that. Thank you for this amazing presentation. I wonder if Maria can tell us if the angling of the pen is for flair of calligraphy, or it helps in discerning letters and reading. Вопрос о том, повороты пера помогают добавить какого-то вкуса и дизайна в каллиграфию, или это действительно помогает как-то более узнаваемо устроить знак, букву, форму?
Я думаю, что с одной стороны это взаимосвязано, а с другой стороны, в первую очередь, я думаю, древние писцы ставили впереди форму, именно красоту, чем легкость чтения.
That's actually was my question. Why they did that? Did they have enough time to do that? Because calligraphy is about the speed, that's what we're thinking, right? And they kind of not wasted, but they spent quite a lot of time to do that. It's a books. It's not a one singular word. So the question why? Зачем они это делали?
Ну, не совсем понятно. Возможно, дальнейшие исследования дадут ответ на этот вопрос, но пока что можно сказать, что ну вот хотели они сделать такую форму широким пером, без вот этих вот составных штрихов. У них не получалось сделать эту форму, но они ее сделать очень хотели. Ну, сделать особенно красиво. Ну, как сегодня мы используем акцидентные какие-то шрифты, да, вот для них это был такой способ акциденции, возможно.
I'm just want quickly to reply to our audience. There are subtitles with translation. You can turn them off or on, and you can see the translation live. And probably the last question, why do you think proper research of the Cyrillic calligraphy processes has been ignored for so long? You partly answered to that, but maybe you have different answers or clarify. Почему этого никто никогда не исследовал?
Ну, можно еще добавить, что до 1917 года было достаточно много интереса к этой теме, но в основном среди палеографов. А в 17 веке, в 1917 году вся эта история прервалась, потому что, ну, как бы такой был негласный запрет, может быть, на все русское, на все национальное. И того возрождения каллиграфии, которое произошло в Европе благодаря Джонстону и Коху, оно у нас не случилось, хотя оно назревало, и, возможно, если бы не было революции, у нас были тоже какие-то свои мастера, которые бы это все открыли еще в начале 20 века.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Oleg and Maria. I'm welcoming you to answer more questions in Q&A window, and I'm welcoming our audience to continue asking. You have some time for the conversation. and we're gonna move forward. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ilya.
Before our next presenters, we'd like to share with you typographic animations made by our sponsors for this year conference. We will have Eugene and Rustam present right after this.
And he wakes up and his arm is doing the thing it's kind of glowing whenever he turns it on. So I think he finally like unlocked 100%.
Great animations. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us at Typographics 2021. Our next pair of speakers, Rustam Gabbasov and Eugene Yukechev, aka Eugene, aka Zhenya, in a Russian way, from typejournal.ru. Rustam and Evgeny are widely known for their publishing activities, but not only. They're both type designers, and you can find, for example, Eugene's fonts at Font Shop. In the last several years, Eugene and Rustam created several super important publishing projects, interviewed dozens of typographers all over the globe, and participated not only in important research, but also in an impressive exhibitions. Without further ado, I'm welcoming here Eugene and Rustam to tell us more about it. Finger crossed, connection will be all right. Good luck, guys.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you, Ilya. Just a second, I will share my screen. Okay. Hello everyone. One more time, my name is Eugene Yukechev. I'm a publisher, type designer, typographer, and I would like to introduce you to my fellow and my partner at Type Journal and Shift Publishers, Rustam Gabbasov. I will speak English and Rustam will speak Russian. You should hear his Russian. It's Hoch Russisch, I would say. I enjoy listening to Rustam. So, and we would like to share with you some projects for our editorial practice. But first, I would like to say a few words about our modest endeavor. So the Type Journal, we launched Type Journal at 2013, and the year after we started the publishing program Shift Publishers. And you can find us always at URL typejournal.ru, and we also have, so this is our online journal, Type Journal. In Russian, it sounds like Schrift. And we have also an English version, what's important for all of us. And you can find here, as Ilya said, dozens of interviews, research, and materials on typographic and visual culture, book design, and so on, type design. So, but tonight we are going to speak about our publishing program, shiftpublishers.com, and about a few books and few researches in the row. So, the first book we are going to show you is a monograph based on a research of Solomon Telengater's works. Telengater was a prolific artist and typographer. He was a pupil and apprentice of L. Lisitsky. He studied at Hutemas. And the book itself was tremendous popular in our bookstore. It completely sold out, unfortunately. But yeah, we are going to show you something. Rustam, you can shed the light on the details.
Да, когда берешься за подобное исследование, за подобную книгу, конечно же, очень важным становится вопрос с архивом и с наследием. И я бы добавил здесь, что в случае этой книги у нас была счастливая возможность работать с уникальным архивом Соломона Теленгатера, который хранит его сын Владимир Соломонович Теленгатер. На этом слайде мы видим ранние работы Соломона Теленгатера. И, собственно, вот то, что прежде всего нас привлекало из ранних работ его, это его работа именно в книжном дизайне. И вот это изображение справа – это страница из книги, которую иногда называют итоговой книгой советского конструктивизма, и она встает в один ряд с такими книжками, как, например, «Для голоса» Маяковского, который оформил Лисицкий, или, например, книга про это с фотомонтажами Александра Родченко. Просто эти две книги были изданы примерно на 5 лет раньше, чем книга «Комсомолия». Книга «Комсомолия» сегодня уже забытого поэта Александра Безыменского, тем не менее осталась в истории как шедевр типографического конструктивизма. И поэма, которая лежит в основе этой книги, имеет довольно сложную структуру. В ней Безыменский соединил сразу несколько поэтических жанров, поэтических форм. Там можно встретить и акростихи, и громкие речевки, рифмованные лозунги. Соломон Теленгатер, как типограф-экспериментатор, с удовольствием подхватил вот всю эту сложную поэтическую структуру поэмы и смог, как пишут исследователи, продирижировать с помощью средств наборного шрифта, с помощью средств типографики, продирижировать поэтический текст своего коллеги Безыменского. В этой книге огромное количество фотомонтажей, которые Теленгатор специально отснял в Совкино, это государственный орган, советское кино, и провел немало вечеров в типографии, создавая вот такую сложную композиционную форму этой книги. Но что самое интересное, конечно, кроме виртуозного обращения со шрифтом, практически все иллюстрации в этой книге тоже исполнены при помощи наборных элементов. Вот этот стиль изобразительного набора Теленгатор очень активно использовал на протяжении своей карьеры в 20-х годах. Это тот самый стиль, который мы можем увидеть, конечно же, не только в работах Теленгатора, но и, например, в работах такого виртуозного типографа, как Николай Ильин. Но, тем не менее, теленгаторовский стиль связан с удивительным синтезом наборного шрифта и неалфавитных знаков, из которых он виртуозно выстраивал иллюстрации.
Looks like we lost Evgeny and his connection.
Давайте я тогда просто расширю
disappeared.
экран и продолжу.
Yeah. We will continue. Rustam will share his screen. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that. We will continue. Итак, вот две обложки 20-х годов, выполненные Теленгатором, просто чуть-чуть покрупнее. И в таком масштабе становится видна, конечно, мастеровитость Теленгатора как типографа. В качестве иллюстративного материала он использует всевозможные неалфавитные элементы, скобки, точки, астериксы или, например, амперсанды, из которых складывает необходимое ему изображение. И второй сюжет, который нас очень интересовал, когда мы занимались подготовкой монографии Теленгатора к публикации, это многогранность Соломона Теленгатора на протяжении его творческого пути, потому что он начал активную работу в начале 20-х и продолжал свой творческий путь до 60-х годов. И надо сказать, что одним из удивительных проектов позднего его уже времени был проект, о котором мы ничего не знали, и о котором нам подсказал типограф Максим Жуков. И мы нашли все эскизы к этому проекту в архиве у сына Теленгатора, в том числе первый вариант рукописи. Этот проект назывался «Об унификации графем алфавита». И нужно сказать, что для 60-х годов это был удивительный пример того, как дизайнер, очень активный в 20-е годы, а мы знаем, что, в общем-то, в 20-е годы было создано приличное количество вот таких вот модернистских проектов, которые потом были забыты в 30-е, например, в связи с изменившейся культурной политикой СССР, да, и с ростом новой культурной политики, связанной с диктатурой Сталина. Так вот, основная мысль Теллингатора была в том, что хорошо бы найти способ записывать текст при помощи некого единого универсального алфавита, который позволял бы избегать избыточного количества форм букв, связанных со сдвоенными сложными звуками. При этом, конечно же, Соломон Теллингатор не мог обойтись без дополнительных диакритических знаков. И это довольно любопытно, что, конечно же, в 20-х, в пору молодости Теллингатора, в СССР довольно активно проводились исследования по латинизации русской письменности. И вот создание некого такого универсального алфавита для всех союзных республик. Конечно же, мы тут должны вспомнить и эксперименты, например, Герберта Байера в Баухаусе, который тоже занимался универсальным алфавитом. И, конечно же, Яна Чихельда, Чихельд, который занимался тем, что тоже пытался сложные фонетические сочетания немецкого языка каким-то образом упростить и унифицировать. Здесь вполне можно попытаться прочитать, значит, вот эти строки текста на английском языке при помощи унифицированного алфавита Соломона Теллингатора, в котором один знак передает строго один звук, и точно такой же эксперимент с русским текстом. Еще один проект, еще одна книга, о которой мы хотели сегодня рассказать, называется «Два шрифта одной революции». Книжка, которая интересно устроена и с точки зрения замысла, и с точки зрения полиграфического исполнения. У одного из авторов этой книги, Владимира Кричевского, была давняя мысль соединить в рамках одной книжки два повествования об одном времени, и чтобы эти повествования были написаны двумя разными авторами, и эти тексты столкнулись бы в середине книжки. И в этой книге эта идея была реализована. Владимир Кричевский писал о палочном шрифте, Алексей Домбровский о шрифте, который который противопоставляется вот такой эстетике абсолютно безавторского палочного шрифта, о шрифте Сергея Чехонина. Надо сказать, что тема палочного шрифта для 20-х годов в Советском Союзе не была, конечно же, суперновой и уникальной. Тут стоит вспомнить и эксперименты Тео ван Дусбурга 19-го, например, года, или работы немецких художников, которые мы можем заметить, в том числе даже в журналах эпохи модерна. Там появляются вот эти удивительные, странные блочные буквы. Но наш главный интерес, наш главный фокус в издании этой книги был в том, что мы хотели вместе с авторами разгадать секрет, почему же палочный шрифт стал настолько популярен именно в Советском Союзе. Да? И можно увидеть вот на этих двух всего лишь примерах из бесчисленного количества похожих образцов, что палочный шрифт в Советской России был популярен не только в полиграфии, не только в плакатах, не только в массовой агитации, но в том числе и в архитектуре. Уникальность палочного шрифта для экономической и политической ситуации в СССР была в том, что это были буквы, которые легко строились по клеточке, по любой условной модульной сетке. Это означало, что с помощью этих букв можно было изобразить любой самый громкий лозунг в любой местности, от городского рабочего клуба до, скажем, деревенской библиотеки. И вот здесь, на этом примере, написано «Изучи шрифт, сделаешь надпись Learn the typeface so you can make the title». И внизу есть короткая подпись Down with illiteracy, то есть это еще и был инструмент для борьбы с неграмотностью. Это образец, великолепный образец из книги 1927 года, автор художник Моисей Бродский. Удивительным образом палочный шрифт оказался удобен и понятен как средство обучения студентов леттерингу, и в частности студентов знаменитой советской школы дизайна и архитектуры, которая называлась сокращенно ВХУТМАС, высшие художественные технические мастерские. Этот стиль вот таких блочных, очень, на первый взгляд, примитивных букв был органичен, конечно же, прежде всего типографом-конструктивистом. И можно заметить связь пропедевтических упражнений в ВХУТМАСе. И тут мы вспоминаем, конечно же, форкурсы в Баухаусе. Во ВХУТМАСе на дисциплине графика преподавал некоторое время Александр Родченко. И его главной чертой, методом обучения студентов было внимательное отношение к линии. Линейность была наиболее яркой чертой пропедевтики Родченко. На этих двух примерах, очень удачных примерах студенческих работ, которые выполнила Анастасия Ахтырка в 1921 году, мы видим крепкую композицию, которая создана из геометрических фигур. И когда мы сравниваем вот эти ранние студенческие работы Анастасии Ахтырка с, например, обложкой папки литографий, которую мы видим справа, мы понимаем, что Родченко учил мыслить студентов универсально и работать одинаково с композицией на листе, как в случае иллюстративных элементов, так в случае шрифта. Вторая большая сюжетная линия внутри этой книги – это шрифт Сергея Чехонина, который фантастическим образом стал человеком, художником в 20-е годы в СССР, по сути являясь классицистом и продолжателем метода художников объединения мира и искусства, но при этом это человек, который забрался на территорию самых ярких авангардистов. И когда мы издавали эту книгу и знакомились с исследованием Алексея Домбровского, мы были поражены, насколько Чехонин оказался рисковым художником и типографом, постоянно работающим вот на этой грани революционной эстетики и кича. Кича, который берет с очень большой иронией все самое яркое из эстетики дореволюционной мироискуснической, цветы, вазы, струящиеся узоры, и соединяет это с особым типом очень острых, очень конфликтных, очень ярких букв. И вот на этом контрасте построено огромное количество и книжных обложек Сергея Чехонина, Он автор более 70 книг, он художник-оформитель более 70 книг. И просто леттеринга, который поражает своей многосоставностью. На острый конфликтный скелет рисованной буквы навешивается многочисленный узор, причем Чехонин с удовольствием и хулиганством цитирует, как я уже говорил, Бакста, Билибина или Евгения Лансере, может быть, одного из ярких художников в мире искусничества, но и при этом умудряется процитировать, как на примере справа, художников-кубофутуристов с их изломанными, пересекающимися плоскостями. И в таком масштабе на экране мы видим, насколько кропотлив был труд Чехонина, леттерера, Чехонина, художника шрифта. Вот пример заголовка логотипа для журнала, это 1918 год, где мы видим как бы первооснову леттеринга Чехонина. Его знаменитые изгибающиеся конструкции, острые невероятные засечки и удивительные пропорции знаков. И в каком-то смысле Сергей Чехонин, будучи вот таким классицистом, забежавшим на территорию авангардистов, стал родоначальником, не то что родоначальником, одним из ярких представителей советской ампирной типографики. И, конечно же, нам было интересно, каким образом этот стиль мог перейти, воплотиться уже в сегодняшние дни, например, в цифровой типографике, в цифровом шрифте. И у Алексея Домбровского есть очень яркие примеры в книге того, как современные дизайнеры попытались переосмыслить рисованный шрифт Чехонина. Один из таких ярких примеров – это работа Тагира Сафаева, которая называется «Серп и молот», где он цитирует как раз-таки вот эту эстетику революционного марша в буквах Сергея Чехонина. Еще один яркий проект называется «Красный клин», Red Clean Typeface. Его автор Галина Багдасарян, это проект 2004 года, попытка поработать с наклонным начертанием и с наклонными формами букв, чуть упростив вот эту сложную декоративность букв Сергея Чехонина, помня о том, что сам Чехонин на самом деле тоже делал подобные эксперименты. И, быть может, он был одним из авторов собственного палочного шрифта, в том числе, о котором в книге идет речь. Но самый большой подарок нас ждал от бюро Мирка Борша. И у нас есть все основания предполагать, что Мирко вдохновлялся именно буквами Сергея Чехонина в его шрифте для журнала о современном искусстве, который называется «Тюника». И самая большая интрига здесь в том, что автор книги Алексей Домбровский поделился с Мирко Борша еще до этого проекта оформления журнала публикации на английском языке. И здесь мы видим, на мой взгляд, очень яркое, самостоятельное и вот какое-то вдохновляющее переосмысление эстетики леттеринга Сергея Чехонина. Женя, у тебя выключен микрофон.
Rustam, you're unstoppable. We are
Sorry, guys.
running out of time, right? And we have one project left. So, are we proceeding?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and the last one, the last project we are going to show you, the Actually, it's our bestseller. Currently, we are working on the third edition of the book of Vladimir Favorsky. It's called the Type, About Type. And this is an explication, of the text of Vladimir Favorsky and his philosophical essay, so to speak, about the type and classification of type. And if we go forward, we can see, Rustam, could you show some details of the book? And the next one, yeah, we can see some titles of the books designed by Favorsky. He was a brilliant wood engraver. He was, by the way, contemporary of Eric Gill. So they were the same age people. And you can see here brilliant and unique method of working with the type of the title and with the composition, with so to speak, intonation of the title. And the theory of Favorsky depicted in the essay. Rustam, could you quote the text which we prepared?
Да, мы знаем о теории графики и теории композиции Фаворского. Первая версия этой теории была записана в виде лекций для студентов Хутемаса в 1921 году. И вот в этой цитате, которую сейчас я прочитаю, в общем-то, заключена одна из главных интриг работы Фаворского с буквами. Он пишет в статье «Шрифт, его типы и связь иллюстрации со шрифтом» чуть позднее, в 1925 году, следующую фразу. «Если взять слова нашего языка, то для всех ясно, что они не безразличны к содержанию своему и являются большей частью живыми словесными изображениями тех вещей, которые они обозначают. Не являются ли буквы тоже сколько-то подлинным изображением тех голосовых жестов, которыми мы при помощи горла, неба, зубов и языка произносим нужный нам звук?» Знак вопроса. Вторая цитата, которую мы тоже не можем не озвучить, это комментарий коллеги, друга семьи Фаворских, священника отца Павла Фаренского, который тоже преподавал во Хутемасе предмет под названием «Анализ перспективы». И Фаворский оформил одну из книг Флоренского, которая называлась «Мнимости в геометрии». К обложке этой книги Флоренский написал комментарий, и там есть такие слова. «Но обложка не вполне достигала бы своего назначения, если бы надписи служили только целям графики, а самая графика их была бы чужда их смыслу. Очевидно, графические особенности надписаний должны не только держать плоскость, но и передавать звуковое пространство интонации голоса и выразить звуковую координацию слов». И вот это повышенное внимание к звуковой интонации слов, как пишет Флоренский, воплощалось в работах Фаворского, в частности, в его рисованном, точнее гравированном, ксилогравированном шрифте. В удивительных формах для него буква несла всегда некое светотеневое решение. В частности, шрифт без засечек, то есть гротеск, он воспринимал как белый, то есть как плоский на листе, а шрифт с засечками, антикву, он видел как объемный и цветной элемент композиции. И все это выразилось вот в тех причудливых формах букв его алфавита. Это его поздняя версия, леттеринг 1948 года, где мы видим, что буквы действительно ведут себя так, как будто громко хотят что-то прокричать или, наоборот, скромно промолчать в строке, в заголовке, в надписи или в абзаце. Еще одна удивительная история этого сюжета – это, конечно, то, насколько восприимчивы оказались ученики Владимира Фаворского в 20-е годы в Хутемасе к теории графики и, в частности, к методам изображения букв, гравирования букв. И перед нами, быть может, единственный пока обнаруженный пример того, как студент в качестве дипломного проекта попытался воплотить идеи Фаворского о рисованном шрифте в наборе, в материале.
Yeah, we need to mention here that Favorsky never did the typefaces. It's only wood engraving. So the only type which connected with Favorsky is wood type by his student.
Да, это шрифт студента, которого звали Борис Грозевский. Впоследствии вместе с Фаворским они довольно плодотворно работали для разных издательств Москвы и оформляли журналы и книги. И еще один небольшой пример того, что происходит с насыщенностью букв в гравированных титульных листах уже у студентов, а не у Владимира Фаворского. Вот на этой обложке студента мы видим неожиданное осветление букв или, например, части знаков, которые оставлены незакрашены. На первый взгляд кажется, что это какая-то вольность, но на самом деле это внимательное следование идеям Фаворского, да, о том, что черно-белый шрифт имеет свой цвет и создает некий рельеф на белой плоскости. И ту же самую игру с перепадом контраста мы видим и в деревянном шрифте Бориса Грозевского. Это конспект или, может быть, черновик будущей книги, которую хотел написать еще один студент Владимира Фаворского, Михаил Тарханов. Эта рукопись была создана в начале 30-х годов, и это полностью рукописная книга, вручную переплетенная Михаилом Тархановым самостоятельно. Здесь мы видим удивительную, интересную попытку упростить идеи Фаворского и создать некое руководство для будущих студентов, будущих учеников, поскольку Михаил Тарханов был преподавателем полиграфического института в Москве впоследствии. И здесь мы видим продолжение идеи того, что форма буквы должна как можно ярче передавать звук, который она обозначает. И на примере овалов в этой рукописи, например, видно, как Тарханов тщательно объясняет вот эти идеи своего учителя. Женя?
Yeah, here's a spread of the or pages of the magazine USSR builds, or kind of, and we see here absolutely modernist typography. So from nowadays, we can see compositions like here, or typography like here around us today. It's amazing how could that work 100 or so years ago. And our aim was, could you, Rustam, change the slide, the next one, to bring the heritage of Vladimir Favorsky in our days, to invite readers into our research and into Favorsky's ideas and his lives and works. we made an infographics which combine his works, his lifelong issues and so on into one double spread page. And you can see here that 2 of his sons died on the war, but he was working, and he was really very productive. And yeah, he was he died about 1964. Yeah, and we totally happy with this book. So yeah, this is the last slide, I think. Yeah, if you have questions, I don't know, do we have time or not, but thank you.
Yeah,
and sorry.
Thank you. Sorry for some technical issues.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot, Rustam and Evgeny. You're doing a very important work, and I just wanted to use this opportunity to publicly say how grateful and lucky we are that you are doing this work. Thank you.
Thanks,
and unfortunately, we don't have much time for many questions, but I don't. I can ignore one, which is a very obvious one. Will it be possible to buy those books translated in English? Are you guys planning anything? Is there any chance that we could expect translations?
Yeah, in short, we are looking for partners for doing that. So we have no particular plans to translate these books, but we will happy to do this with co-publisher or something like this. Yeah.
Wonderful. We are welcoming everyone to the Q&A window to ask more questions. I totally understand how impressive all those books and all those images could be. Think about it. Guys will be with us and ready to answer any of your questions. And we are moving forward to our next pair of speakers. Right now, we would like to show you a few more animations from our sponsors. All were made just for this year conference. We will have Max and Irina right after that.
Get a font in your inbox every single month. Font of the month.
And here we go again. Thanks a lot to all of you for staying that long with Typographics 2021 and Cyrillic session, day 5, I believe. Our next and the last pair of speakers for today will be Irina Smirnova and Max Ilyanov. I just thought that basically everyone who've been presenting today connected with the guys we just heard, typejournal.ru, because their first time I saw the article by Oleg and Maria earlier today was exactly at typejournal.ru, and now again we have a pair of designers connected with this project. Irina, since graduating from Type and Media 2010, Irina Smirnova has been consulting, teaching, and designing Cyrillic for Typotech and other studios. In an effort to find a connection between writing and type design, she dived deeply into the theory and practice of calligraphy. In 2017, she became a teacher and curator of type design course in St. Petersburg, and in 2018, started to work with a graduate from the course, Max Ilyanov. Together, they founded a group, Cooperative. Max Ilyanov is interested in sound and visual explorations, weird programming stuff, and type design as a mind-expanding practice. He's currently working on projects for typejournal.ru and Typotech. So please welcome Irina and Max. Guys, please go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, I am Max.
I'm Irina, and together we are Cooperative, and we would like to thank Typographics and Ilya for inviting us.
This talk is not about neutrality and not about statistics, so you will hear a lot about both.
The main idea of our talk is to ask what the alphabet knows about itself. Neutral started as a graduation project by Kai Bernau at the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. The research was well documented and presented in this book, and the typeface was later published by Typotech. Kai started by asking questions and discussing the idea of neutrality with many influential designers. What is neutrality? Is it good or evil? Is it useful? Does it exist?
He formulated the criteria of neutrality and started to compare different typefaces. First, he compared B classification groups, and then he compared individual typeface and selected 10 references for his project.
He measured key parameters, averaged them, and designed a typeface.
And this project came to us with the task to design Cyrillic.
The most important thing for us in this project is not the final graphics of the typeface, but working with ideas, not a utilitarian view, but a conceptual.
Neutral is, besides other things, is an artistic statement. And the first thing we realized, there was nothing we could say here.
The language of type design is very limited, and it is difficult to say anything beyond its scope.
The research is limited by the task by designing Cyrillic.
All the big questions are already answered, and key parameters of the typeface are already defined.
Kai has done an exhaustive research of neutrality.
We could not collect a similar set of references.
And also there was nothing we could measure.
And why there was no similar references and now nothing to measure? The reason is that modernism that deepened the understanding of Latin alphabet as a system did not happen in Cyrillic. There was a desire and intention for modernism. Maybe some attempts can be found, but they were not widespread. And finally, they did not change things. And now you can see the difference. Kai's references are cherry-picked modernist typefaces. Most of the references we finally selected for our research were designed much later, in the time of postmodernist thinking and production.
And at this point, we were inspired by the possibility to reconstruct modernism or to employ a modernist way of thinking in our context. The first thing we started to look was system-forming principle in Cyrillic. A system-forming principle exists in Latin. It looks like a whole alphabet unfolds from a single form. Also, we can see that letter forms are almost the same in a medieval manuscript and in nowadays typesetting. The white forms are perfectly clear.
In Cyrillic, everything is a lot more complicated. While working with Cyrillic, it seems that alphabet tends to fall apart. It takes great effort to put it back together, and seeing the unity is a challenge. Also, the letter forms used in type design today did not grow from Cyrillic writing, but they were designed following European models, which are rooted in European writing styles.
And if we look at white forms, the mess is even more obvious. What kind of form lives here and what kind of life is going on is not clear.
Nevertheless, thinking about Cyrillic, we often borrow the principles from Latin type design, forcing inconvenient details to fit them.
Working with our writing system in such a way, we are getting Cyrillic-less Cyrillic. There are many ways to design Cyrillic-less Cyrillic. Sometimes it seems that it is the only way, but what it means? It means that a tickling object is always present, which irritates us, but does not reveal itself in any other way except tickling.
Following this logic, the thing that will include the excluded can be called Cyrillic full Cyrillic. And what tools do we have to do it?
We can copy-paste the letters that are identical to Latin. We can look at the groups of similar letters, but how do they relate to each other? We can think of many opinions and judgments, but the question why is either not been asked or cannot be answered. The most frequent question is how. We can use the recipes, for example, for letter L, B, K, J, or Ya. Nothing about whole here as well. To describe this situation, we can use the words by Judith Butler. There is only a taking up of the tools where they lie, where the very taking up is enabled by the tool lying there. In our case, the tools lie in the area of producing Cyrillic, not reflecting on it. Following this metaphor, we can take up the tools and move them little by little until situation shifts.
So we collected all the available references and got 118 sans serifs. Thanks to FontStand and many studios and designers who responded to our request. In order to stop judging about the quality by the name of the designer, we replaced the names with numbers and thus turned binder into blinder and started to look at the printouts. We discussed every page until we agree to which of the 4 groups of neutrality it belongs. Then we went through all the references again and sorted them according to their proportions. Besides well-known static and dynamic proportions, we noticed 2 other distinct groups. And finally, we looked at the form variations of each letter and numbered different kinds. The final set of references included only the typefaces that passed through these 3 filters.
While working with the references, we started to draw 2 individual versions as neutral as we can. These are the first drawings, and when we compared them, we saw the discrepancy. First, we tried to get rid of this difference in discussion, but we could not find convincing arguments. There should be a tickling object somewhere around, but how we can see it? It was hidden from us by our knowledge. In order to see the tickling object, the observer needs to keep looking until he shifts himself and sees the view from a different angle. The minimal difference between 2 images could describe what was hidden. The idea is called parallax vision and was conceived by Slavoj Žižek.
We wrote down on paper all the recipes we knew as questions and put them on the wall. We looked at the questions wondering what the alphabet can tell us. And the first thing it told was that our knowledge was extremely uneven. They were heavy, entangled, overloaded with attention things and things that got hardly any attention. But the system forming principle must include everything. How can we spread attention evenly?
We sorted all our questions into heaps and got 3. The first, constructions, provokes the hottest debates on the internet. The second, complex curves, is the area of expert knowledge. And about the last group, ratios and relationships, almost nobody, almost never talks.
But only the third group includes all the letters. So we decided that it is exactly what we are going to work with. And we marked all the widths and heights, and instead of odd collection of questions about individual letters, we finally had a homogeneous material to work with. Each letter had its own voice.
To the 12 selected references, we added our 2 prototypes and got 14 fonts to measure. Inside the digital files, we marked the intervals with x1, y1, and so on. First, we've got measurements in absolute units, but we are looking for ratios, so we need to choose one parameter as a yardstick. We considered several and rejected all of them. Instead, we decided to grant suffrage to all Cyrillic letters and let them vote for each other.
So we compared every parameter to every other. As a result, we had almost 1 million votes. We worked as electoral commission. We just had to carefully collect and analyze all the votes.
How we can think about it? How we can find words to explain to ourselves something we don't know?
It is important to show how the measurements were arranged. Here is an example. x2 in H equals something and x2 in E equals something. Their ratio is 0.87, so we saved it. Then x2 in E was compared to every other parameter in the font. This was done for every parameter in every reference.
Then we averaged the ratios that came from 14 references. To do this, we used median instead of arithmetic means because median is sensitive to where the parameters are grouped together and cannot fall in the gap. Then we subtracted the average value from the individual points of view, so let's say so, and got deviation, the minimal difference. The average of the deviations gives the coherence of the ratio. It seems that it is where the tickling comes from.
So, besides the measurements taken from the fonts, we calculated how they interact with each other, their coherence. It is like a metadata that tell us how these values actually live in the alphabet.
All along, we have been trying to figure out if there's something in the alphabet that exists beyond our attention. Does it exist? And now it has become obvious that yes, it does.
There are ratios that we can easily see with our eyes. For example, 1-to-1 ratio. It's easy to see that segments on the left obviously relate to each other as 1-to-1. But when the ratio is 0.82, it is very difficult to see that it is the same ratio in all the cases. If the ratios are not precisely the same, it becomes impossible to see the pattern. The data showed us that such ratios in our alphabet are the most frequent. We faced the reality that besides commonplace, which everybody knows, there is something that is absolutely unconscious.
But still, we had a huge amount of data, too big for our tiny human minds. Sometimes the measurements contradicted each other, sometimes they were the same. If we take one, what would happen to the other? We tried to study the data, but realized that even looking only at the strongest connections would take a year or so. But the important thing, as we know, is to ask right question. We remember discrepancy in our prototypes and started to look from the biggest mismatches, moving gradually deeper and deeper. And at some point, we realized that this way of working with data was not enough. Thus, the microscope was created.
Microscope is a tool that helps us to look at one ratio in a very detailed way. It shows all the information and visualizes it. After looking at microscope, we adjusted the forms according to the median, and it was not a mechanical job. We had to analyze and try to understand what the data tells. Sometimes it was more obvious, sometimes less, but always the alphabet was leading the process.
For example, this is how the letter E was formed. The width of the letter came from the letter N, nothing unusual here. The height of the triangle also came from a predictable place from the height of the triangle M, but it would be hard to guess that it is exactly 94%. The width of the top white came from the place that we have been difficult to even think about. It is 60% of the width of the letter E.
There were situations when we followed the data and made some parameters smaller, when it seemed impossible, too narrow. But we tried, and unexpectedly it worked. In the words, we saw unity. After a while, we felt as if it was not us who drew it, a detached look of an observer. And this indicated that we have found something that is not our personal, but comes from the alphabet, from the common space.
The strings stretched between the related parameters helped us to keep going without getting lost, and to make sure our attention is spread evenly across the alphabet. The top line shows a group of related letters everyone who designed Cyrillic knows about. The lines below shows the relationships that were revealed by the data. We would never guess they exist. And there are a lot more of them.
It seems that we have discovered the way to see unity in Cyrillic. It is a similar change of perception as when a young type designer learns to see the wide forms. It is a specific kind of attention that can be trained, the ability to see intervals. This is what the intervals in these three letters look like. We wanted to see the specific Cyrillic rhythm, which is very different from Latin. And at this point, the alphabet stopped falling apart, but started to form a system, one-dimensional system that consists of scalar values, the intervals.
And this is final character set. And there is a metaphor that can describe our experience. We felt like working with living being.
Any type designer, a punch cutter, an artist drawing originals for phototype setting, or someone building a font file on a computer, any professional can tell much less than he can realize in the process. Some insights cannot be fully understood, but they accumulate in the letter forms. So the alphabet contains the hidden knowledge about itself. And when we stretched the strings on the wall, it reminded of a growing neural network of Cyrillic, similar to our nervous system. The structure used our active attention and our hands to grow itself, and we were listening to what it tells us to do next.
And we cannot say what exactly it was, something local and specific to this project, or something related to Cyrillic in general, but we are happy to welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, guys. I'm listening this lecture probably for third or fourth time, and I still don't understand half of it. But what I wanted to give you as a feedback is a comment of Irma, who perfectly conclude my feelings as well. Hats off to you. Apart from the very subject you took on yourself to investigate, I'm amazed by the approach you had during this investigation. You took a scientific approach and made it witty and interesting. Totally agree with that. I'm welcoming everyone who is still with us. Thanks a lot. I'm seeing quite a lot of people still online. Please join us in QA window and ask your questions. To start with, I'm going to start by saying that I remember the project Kai did in Type and Media, I think 2006. I remember how many questions he got from the teachers, and how many debates were around the idea of neutrality in general, because for Dutch eyes, neutrality is one thing, for German eye, and neutrality in Latin is the other thing. And I'm still curious to see, is any chance neutrality is possible in Cyrillic, which is a super complicated, very, very controversial script. How you feel about the results? That's gonna be my question from design point of view. The result of the Cyrillic, is it natural enough? Is this Cyrillic really the answer to neutrality?
The thing we understood about neutrality is that it's from the idea space, and any specific design is just a reflection, imperfect reflection. So my personal feeling that neutrality in this world does not exist, but it's very interesting to work with it because as an idea, because it leads you to the places you would never go without it. So it's like something very abstract that doesn't exist, but still it helps you and it guides you.
It's like an abstract point in space.
So, and the question was about the result. Does it feel natural or does it feel neutral, right? Well, like our Kai got his definition of neutrality, and our definition, like the important thing about neutrality which we worked with in our project, is not to force our personal opinion on this typeface, but try to see what comes from everyone, from every letter, from the references. So it should have been something impersonal, something common, and the place where many people agree. And also this decentralization idea, when we rejected the N as a unit, one letter as a unit, but let the connections to spread. So it's also self-organization is a good response to neutrality in this real world. So, did I answer?
You did, yeah. But I will follow with another question about that. Was there any moment when you thought about, so just for everyone to explain a little bit, Cyrillic alphabet contains of different letters. Some of letters are basically components from the Latin. They originally united for Latin, Greek. Some of them really unite quite different writing systems. And probably working on the Cyrillic, you might have a moment when you thought to reinventing the designs for that original forms coming from the Latin. Did you think ever of rethinking the letters like A or B?
No.
Or something like that?
Yes,
I think our attention was on redesigning a method on how we look at it. The system that is upon all these writing systems.
So in the context of this, so we accepted Kai's typeface as one of the things we don't question. And the way of working with Cyrillic plus Latin, we didn't question this, but we were looking how to let Cyrillic be what it is within these limitations. So if this would be a completely new Cyrillic typeface, the result would have been very different. It would be a different selection of references, probably the same method can be applied, but still, this was our limitation we did not question.
Am I understanding correctly that basically you came up with the recipes and those recipes could work not only for very natural faces, but also for humanistic sans serifs, for maybe serifs? Did you try anything else?
Well, that's what we are going to do. We want to use this method for working with other typefaces, with original typefaces, without collecting and measuring references. But what we were looking for was not a specific recipe, but a way of working which is different. So yes, what we want to do that it would be possible to apply it in very different tasks.
Probably the last question. Are you guys going to publish all those results somehow into, I don't know, some... Tell us more about that.
First, there will be article on Typotech. Also, we already discussed it with Type Journal that we will be publishing a little longer text there. And somehow we want to share the methods.
Data. We need data. Will you share the data?
It's a question to Typotech.
Yeah,
maybe it can be published. We discussed with Peter that we can publish it on their GitHub account, but
I think it was partially lost.
Well, we should reinitiate this discussion.
The data is lost.
The
data not lost. I lost my computer and lost a particular files which we measured, but all the
tools,
all the cleared data, all the data extracted from it was saved, and it can be useful. It's not only the this focused setup. It can be recombined and used in other things, and I think we can share it.
Yes, so we are thinking how to share it on GitHub and maybe developing more tools, but they are very flexible.
Yes,
and
also we constructing an instrument to analyzing typefaces, to analyzing your current typeface which you're working on. You can see the to marking this those intervals, to render it in a typeset with intervals, to do things which have some correlations with things you, Ilya, did with rhythms, but on this system on intervals with some statistics on it, with different ways to visualize it. Yes, and it's
wonderful.
So that's to summarize. It's still going on, and it's moves forward. So we ask new questions, make new tools, and it's never ends.
Wonderful, guys. Thanks a lot for sharing this with us and answering all questions. We moving forward, I think, and into the closing part of. Unfortunately, we have just a couple minutes in QA window. If any of our audience would like to quickly ask anything, please go there, ask, and Max and Irina will be here with us until the session is over. And I'm inviting back Ellen with the closing part of this day. Thanks a lot to everyone for being with us.
That was incredible. Oh yeah, I can't believe it, how you took us from old Russian to the avant-garde to this like incredible 21st century research. And then at the end, the missing hard drive. I feel like we could create like an epic TV series based on the history of Russian typography. Incredible, incredible. Thank you, Ilya, for bringing together these great speakers. Thanks to all of you in the audience, to each one of our sponsors, and to Cooper Union for continuing to produce this outstanding festival. Only here will you see content like this. An incredible team at Cooper Union is working behind the scenes to bring this content to you. We are back here on Thursday, June 17th, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for a series of talks curated by Eugene Park and Casper Lamb. It's going to be another great evening. See you Thursday. Thank you.